this video we will understand theory of consumer behavior and cover concepts like budget set, budget line, preference, indifference curve, map, utility function, rate of substitution, diminishing rate of substitution, monotonic preferences, demand, law of demand, substitution effect, income effect, normal, inferior and given goods, substitute, complement, price elasticity of demand. What is consumer's budget? Suppose you have 100 rupees, then you can only buy those things that are less than or equal to rupees 100. Then this rupees 100 is your budget. Now suppose our budget is rupees 100 and we have only two goods in the market, that is apple, which costs rupees 10 per piece, and orange, which costs rupees 20 per piece. Then the every combination of apple and orange together or only single together, any combination we can buy under or equal to using that 100 rupees, which is P1 is price of good one or apple, X1 is quantity of good one or apple we can buy, and P2 is price of good 2 or orange, X2 is quantity of good 2 orange we can buy, and the combination in which we can buy these two using the budget M is called the budget set. We cannot buy items which exceeds our budget, which is rupees 100 for now at the present example. That's why it is also known as budget constraint. Now let's come to budget line. The budget line, the equation for which is P1 x1 plus P2 x2 equals to M. Any point on the budget line is the set of all the bundles or combinations of the two different products or goods we can buy using our budget. Now if we buy anything below this budget line, suppose it comes here, then while using these goods we will not be utilizing our full budget, and thus we will have some leftover money. Suppose if we buy goods which are priced over the budget line, then we will have to spend some extra or we will have to exceed our budget. Now here we see the budget line is downward sloping. Why? Because if we reduce the quantity of good 2 and increase the quantity of good 1 using same amount of money, the line will still be downward sloping. Suppose if we increase the quantity of good 2 and decrease the quantity of good 1, the line will still be downward sloping, whereas the equation for the budget line will be the same, P1 x1 plus P2 x2 equals to M. Therefore budget line is always downward sloping. The equation for the slope of a budget line is del x2 by del x1 equals to minus P1 by P2, which comes from the equation P1 del x1 plus P2 del x2 equals to 0. Here del x1 and del x2 are the change in quantity of the goods. Preferences. In economics, we consider the consumer is a rational person who knows what she or he wants. In monotonic preferences, there must be at least two sets from which the consumer must choose. In the monotonic preference, the consumer chooses set which has more of one good and not less of the other. Suppose in set 1, A and B both are goods, the consumer will choose between set 1, set 2 and set 3. Here only set 3 has the extra of good A and not less of good B. Thus the consumer will definitely choose set 3, and this type of consumer behavior or preference is known as monotonic preferences. Considering the consumer choice is monotonic, the consumer will obviously choose set 3 or set 4. If he chooses set 3, then he will have to forego the extra 2 units of good B which he was getting in set 4, and if he chooses set 4, he will have to forego or let go the extra 2 units of good 1 he was getting in set 3. This type of letting go is known as rate of substitution. Suppose the consumer has 6 sets, set 1, set 2, set 3, set 4, set 5 and set 6, which has different quantities of goods A and B, 10, 10, 12, 8, 12, 10, 10, 12, 15, 5, 18, 2. The consumer is 100% likely to choose between set 3 and set 4 because they have more of one good and not less of the other. The consumer is likely to choose only 60% of the consumers are likely to choose set 5 and only 10% will choose set 6. This decreasing rate of choice between different sets is known as diminishing rate of substitution. Suppose the consumer has 3 bundles or 3 sets which cost him rupees 100 for each set. If he purchases any bundle, it will cost him rupees 100. Then such different types of bundles which consumers consider same or indifferent are called indifferent bundles. Now if we plot these different types of bundles in a two-dimensional figure and we join this curve, then we'll get a curve which is known as indifference curve. An indifference curve is also downward sloping. Now let us draw an indifference curve. Indifference curve 1, 2 and indifference curve 3. The customer is likely to prefer the bundles which are present on the higher indifference curve rather than the lower ones. And this is known as indifference map. In utility, to all the different sets of bundles that consumer may prefer, we assign numbers from the lowest to the greatest. The number having the highest face value will be the most preferred by the consumer, and the number having the lowest face value will be least preferred by the consumer. These numbers which are assigned to different sets are known as utility number or utility function. All these utility numbers are assigned considering the income of the consumer or the preference of the consumer or the price of the goods, regarding the consumer's choice. Up to now we have studied the quantity of goods that the consumer chooses optimally depends on the price of the goods itself and price of other goods, the consumer's income and her taste and preferences. Now what is demand? It is the quantity of goods that a consumer is willing to buy and is able to afford at a given price. It is known as demand. Now consider a function y is equal to fx. In demand function, x is an independent variable and y is a dependent variable. When we plot it in two-dimensional figure, we put price in vertical direction and quantity in horizontal direction. And considering y equals to 5 plus x, in this equation x is an independent variable and y is a dependent variable. Y equals to 5 plus x, it is an increasing function, and increasing function when we plot it in two-dimensional figure, it is an upward sloping function. Similarly, y equals to 50 minus x is a decreasing function because with increase in value of x, the value of y will decrease, and it is a downward sloping. In demand curve, the equation for the demand curve is Q equals to dP. In two-dimensional figure, the price is always plotted against the vertical axis and quantity is always plotted against the horizontal axis, and the equation of the demand curve is given by Q equals to dP, and it is a downward sloping curve. The law of demand states that if a consumer's demand for a certain good moves in the same direction as the consumer's income, the consumer demand for that good must be inversely related to the price of the good. This is known as law of demand. In demand function, we study the relation between the price of the good and its demand. We can also study the relation between the demand of a good and the income of the consumer. First, let's study what's income effect. The increase or decrease in demand for a good the consumer chooses with the rise in income of a consumer, or fall, known as vice versa, is known as income effect. What are normal goods? Normal goods are those goods the demand for which increases with the increase in the income of the consumer. Suppose the consumer's income increases, then demand also increases. For example, suppose right now you can have only 1 cup of coffee in a day. If your income increases, then you can afford 3 cups or 4 cups of coffee in a day. Then this example is known as normal good. Inferior goods are those goods whose demand decreases with the rise in income of the consumer or vice versa. Examples of inferior goods are low quality coarse cereals. For people at lower level of income, these low quality coarse cereals are normal goods to them. But for people who have more income, for them this becomes inferior goods. Now, before studying about different goods, we have to study about substitutes and complements. Substitutes are those goods which cannot be used together. Suppose tea and coffee. Coffee is a substitute for tea for people with higher income, and tea is a substitute for coffee for people with lower incomes. These are known as substitutes. Example: tea, coffee. Examples of complements. Complements are those goods, for example tea and sugar, which are used together. Suppose tea cannot be taken without sugar, or sugar is a must while having tea. Now let's come to different goods. Different goods are those goods which cannot be easily substituted. As your income increases or decreases, the demand for different goods is directly related to its price. Market demand. It is the total demand of all consumers of a particular good at a particular price. For example, suppose there are 4 consumers A, B, C and D, and their demand is 5 for A, 10 for B, 15 for C and 20 for C. By adding all these demands of these 4 consumers, we get 50. Then this 50 will be the market demand for that particular good. Elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand, denoted by ED, is the measure of responsiveness of the demand for a good to change in its price. Now let's see. Q0 is the initial quantity and Q1 is the final quantity. P0 is the initial price and P1 is the final price. And del Q1 is the difference of Q1 minus Q0, and del P is the difference between P1 and P0. And thus the equation for the price elasticity of demand will be del Q, change in quantity, by initial quantity, to del P, change in price, divided by initial price. For note, price elasticity of demand is a negative number. Price elasticity of demand is considered to be elastic when percentage change in quantity del Q by Q naught is greater than percentage change in price, which is del P by P naught. It is denoted by ED greater than 1. Now price elasticity of demand is considered to be inelastic when percentage change in quantity is less than percentage change in price. It is denoted by ED less than 1. Price elasticity of demand is considered to be unitary elastic when percentage change in quantity is equals to percentage change in price. It is denoted by ED equals to 1. Now let's come to elasticity and expenditure. Now consider when there is an increase in the price of a good, and condition 1, if percentage decrease in quantity is greater than the percentage increase in price, then the expenditure increases. Condition 2, If percentage decrease in quantity is less than the percentage increase in price, then expenditure decreases. In condition 1, suppose if the price of a commodity was 100 rupees previously and now it has become 200 rupees, and you are not reducing the quantity and are consuming the same amount of quantity as before, then your expenditure will increase. In condition 2, according to condition 2, if the previous price was rupees 100 and new price is rupees 200, and previously you were consuming 100 quantity and now you are consuming only 10, then obviously your expenditure will decrease. Now let's see when there is a decline in the price of a good. It says that if the increase in quantity of consumption of a particular good is greater than the decrease in its price, then your expenditure will increase. Suppose you previously consumed 100 apples for 100 rupees. Now suppose the price of the apple is gone down by 10 rupees and now it costs rupees 90 for the same amount, but you increased your consumption amount to 200 apples now. Obviously your expenditure will increase. Let's see condition 2. If percentage increase in quantity of consumption is less than the percentage decrease in price, then your expenditure will go down. Same example, suppose previously you consumed 100 apples for 100 rupees. Now the price of the apple has declined and you have declined the quantity of consumption more. Suppose previously you consumed 100 apples, now you consume only 20 apples and the price is reduced to 90. Obviously your expenditure is decreased. Apple price previous new, apple 100 new 200, price 100 new price 90.